powerless to do anything because the people around him didn't want to hear him. Look at this, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes hotshot. Look at him sitting there talking like he's got a word from God. This is the carpenter. This is Jesus. Who is he to think that he has anything to say to us? After all, he's so young and inexperienced. And today on this intergenerational Sunday, sometimes we have to wrap our mind around that. Our need for one another. Right? This need that we have as younger people to learn from our elders, and the reliance that our elders have on the younger, and those in the sandwich generation who are pushed and pulled in either direction, sometimes the wise elder and sometimes sitting at the feet as a student. But we realize this need for one another. And it's hard to remember that Jesus was 33 when he died. So at 29, where he is right now, with the people in his town, they're looking at him. You kid, you big mouth little brat. Who are you coming here telling us what we need to do? The thing is, they probably knew that they needed to do the things that he was telling them, but they also knew through pride that he probably would become recognized, and he would gain recognition and notoriety through his word, and they didn't want that to happen. He's just a poor carpenter boy from this small town of 150 or 200 people. Who is he to have a message for us? And so they wanted to put him in his place, and to put him in his place, they refused to hear, and therefore took away his power to do anything among them. But did that hurt him? It was to their own detriment. And that's how we are as a people when we won't hear. But the problem is, there are too many people talking. So many voices at once talking, claiming to have a word from God, that it gets tiring, and the message gets jumbled up, and you don't know who to listen to and who to shut out. I'll admit, I'm frustrated. People are always stand up and harping about rights, equal rights. Let's take the African Americans, for example. 1865, they were freed. 1960s, they finally got some equality. And so here they are, still harping and bickering and moaning about they want to be treated equally, they want to have equal chance at jobs, in schools, in life in general. Well, why don't they just go get a job and quit bickering? Why be so lazy? Why sit there and complain all the time about things? Why don't they get up and do something? It's extremely frustrating. And then you have the Native Americans, all boo-hoo. The government gave them a ton of land. Look at the casinos they have, for Pete's sake. They're making more money than any of us will ever dream of. Hand over fist. Cha-ching. But yet they sit there and complain and moan and whine that the U.S. government took away their land all this time ago. Why would we dwell on things that happened hundreds of years ago? Forget about it. Move on. All this whining about alcoholism on the reservations and how they have no services. Come on. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps like the rest of us and get it done. And then the gays. Oh my God. They have a freaking parade, for God's sake. Okay? And finally they got marriage equality, so hopefully they're going to shut up. You know who's discriminated against? Me. I'm a straight, white male. Okay? So if you're going to say poor thing, poor baby, I'm right here. I'll take all of your compassion and condolences. Jesus went out with this message of equality, his message of what we celebrated yesterday, independence. 2,000 years ago. So what the heck are we doing complaining and whining about it today? Get over it, as the Eagles said. I won't say the rest of it because we're in church. We know the lyrics. But the thing is, I don't recall that Jesus was ever lobbying the government to change laws. I don't recall that Jesus was ever part of a protest where they were picketing out in front of Pilate's mansion. or Herod's palatial estate. I don't remember that. Probably because it didn't happen. Jesus realized that you could not legislate freedom. He realized that by passing laws and changing government policy, you could not change the hearts of human beings. He realized with great foresight, with that only a prophet could have, that here we are all this time later, realizing that African Americans going into a job interview automatically, regardless of their education, automatically are at a disadvantage to the white dude. It's a fact. That Jesus realized that someday there would be this thing called privatized institutions, privatized jails and prisons that were owned by corporations, and that when they signed the dotted line with the local state governments to build these places, that there would be quotas to guarantee that they would make their money. So they had to have X amount of people at any given time inside these prisons. Well, guess who's going to go in there? Let's clean up the parks and the streets of those hoodlums, those brats. He realized that for some reason, when I look at the park, right over here at Greenbrier, and there's these kids shooting off fireworks and causing trouble, and every once in a while even flashing guns, causing trouble, beating each other up. And then we would say, you know what, we need to get them off the street. Put them in juvie, lock them up, clean up the streets of their no-goodness. That's what we need to do. But if we saw a little white boy doing something that's a little less than kosher, we'd say, oh, he's just being a kid. He'll grow up to be an upstanding young man someday, so just let him get it out of the system. And perhaps Jesus had the foresight to realize that the Native Americans, I was on this resolution at General Synod, and when I saw it, I thought, you gotta be kidding me. It was a resolution to encourage the owner of the Washington Redskins to change the racist name of their team. And when I saw that, I thought, oh God, here we go. The UCC jumping on every single social justice bandwagon. And why did I have to be on this silly committee? And I felt that way. Until some Native American elders and youth came and explained what it's like on the reservation, explained what it's been like over the past 500 years, where when there's systemic oppression, you don't merely go in there and kill people, you dehumanize them. You teach them to think of themselves as less than human, and over a lot of time, it takes hold, and it works. And so now today, among the youth, Native American youth have 5 times the suicide rate of our youth. One of the kids, 10 years old on the reservation just before they left to come to Synod, had killed himself. Why? Because he wanted to relate to the white folks, but the white folks always reminded him that he wasn't one of the white folks. But he didn't want to be one of the Redskins, because the Redskins just weren't cool. They were impoverished. They were downtrodden. There's nothing fun about that. And so this kid had no identity. And at 10 years old, being hopeless, takes his own life. You know where the term Redskins comes from? She came up and she had this document and she showed it from 1798. And on the document, it was a sheet from the United States government. And it had prices written in British pounds. We didn't have dollars back then, apparently. And it was the price given for an Indian scalp. A baby girl, a baby boy, a youth girl, a youth boy, a grown man, a grown woman. And those scalps were called Redskins. So this is how much you get for a Redskin from this type of person. Something clicked. I thought, you know, that's what Redskin means. If the team that's in our national capital is going to have a name, that reminds the native peoples of this land how worthless they are and how worthless they've been made to feel, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. And then there's the gays. Well, okay, there's marriage equality now. But how many people have already, let alone who are going to from now, do everything they can in their power to stop that, to find every little nook and cranny to squeeze into to say, oh, I don't have to do your wedding. I don't agree with that. Perhaps Jesus knew that there would be pastors that in the name of God would have a hardware store and say, I'm not going to let any gay people into my store. How does he figure that out? Is there a test for that, or I'm not quite sure how he's going to know? And the list goes on and on and on, because people will always find some way to oppress, no matter who you are, no matter where you've been, no matter where you come from, no matter what the government says about your rights. Jesus realized that if you want to change the world, you have to change the hearts of humankind. You have to change and appeal to each individual, to change their hearts, to see everybody equally as beautifully and wonderfully made in the image of God. And Jesus knew that nothing short of that would bring peace and harmony and love in this world. Those are the words of the prophet. But Jesus also knew that many people would not hear. Jesus knew, just like Ezekiel was told by God, I'm going to send you to these hard-hearted, stubborn people, and many will not hear you. They will refuse to hear you. Not because they're deaf, because they have no interest in what you have to say, but you will say it anyway. And they will know, this is the part I love, even though they claim that they do not hear the words coming out of your mouth, no matter how much they plug their ears, they will know that the words you are speaking have come from God. Imagine how uncomfortable that must be. To try to keep your heart hard, cold, hateful, bitter, but knowing all along that that message that you're hearing, to open up, to receive, to love, to embrace, is coming from God. That's going to be so uncomfortable. Can't even imagine. But that feeling of finally opening up, how refreshing it must be. And so we ask ourselves, what can we do? Well, let's see. The wind blew this down about 6 months ago. I think it's about time to go back up, isn't it? So if there's anybody volunteering to get up on a ladder today or tomorrow, here we go. So that folks driving by, walking by, riding their bike by our church will know that we are a church that stands up for the message and the love of God. Not hatefully. Not hatefully. We're not going to point our fingers at people who don't agree with us. We're not going to tell them they're going to hell. We're not going to tell them that they're wrong. We're not going to tell them that they're idiots because they can't hear God's voice. But no, just like that banner says, we're only going to say that God is still speaking. And we choose to listen. It was an amazing thing to be there at Synod. I dreaded it. I knew it was going to be long and arduous and tiring and probably even very boring. But seeing the things that we did made me really proud to be a UCC pastor, to be a UCC congregant, a member of this denomination. What else can we do? I was talking to Weston about what some youth had to say. There was a forum at Synod. And it's funny because we're always talking about, why don't the young people come to church? Well, I think it's because of this and because of that, because of the other. But they did this really weird thing. They put youth on a panel and asked them, why don't you come to church? It was crazy. Who does that? Don't let youth speak. They don't know anything. And what did they say? Oh, it was beautiful. The biggest thing that draws them into church is service. Is showing love and compassion. Their words, not mine. And then, after the service project is done, whether you're feeding the homeless or marching in the pride parade or whatever the case may be, you get together afterward and you talk. You talk about not merely that, oh, good for us, we fed the homeless, now we're good people. We talk about why does such a thing as homelessness no longer exist? What are the causes? What are we doing to feed the system? What are we not doing to fix the system? What could we be doing as individuals for one another? Those are kinds of discussions. And then, again, their words, not mine, they relate it to theology. I love it. What did God have to do with all this? Is God causing this? Is God somehow trying to work through us to fix this? Is it because we haven't been listening in the first place that this stuff happened? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And then, let's do something about it. And as I was listening to that, and then I heard this message about this guy was talking about we need consecrated places and spaces and time. And somehow all these messages started coming together about oppression and youth who love God and love humans but want an outlet to do those things. I think that's why Jesus was walking the earth and sending out his disciples. Could be wrong. And then talking about these consecrated places and spaces, and then it hit me. What if when I'm in the park and I see these hoodlums running around causing trouble, what if I don't think, man, get them out of here. Corral them up and get them out of here. Throw them in juvie. Just get them off the street. Make them quit causing trouble. What if instead I went to the imam at the mosque down the street, and I went to the rabbi at the synagogue over on the corner, and I went to the African American church over here and the Ethiopian church right over there, and I said, hey, let's you and I get all of our people together and go to the park. And let's consecrate this space. Let's make this a sacred space and show the community that this is a safe place where our youth are going to live and learn and laugh and play together. I think that's a great way to send a message. Instead of pointing fingers, instead of kicking people in the behind and telling them that they're anything less than human beings, what if we were to consecrate that space? And then finally, what if, maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, what if either instead of church or right after church, we went downstairs and we all share a meal and say we have, maybe 5 different possibilities for service outlets. 5 passions, right? Something like, whether it be bike racks or a peace garden or feeding the homeless or whatever the case may be. What if we picked a group, a team, and we joined with other people and made a commitment to do these things in our community right here, to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak. What if we were to do that? And what if then we were to invite the youth to join us, our youth and their youth and the youth in between, and then talk about it afterward? I wonder what would happen. Perhaps we might find that even those youth have something to say. Maybe even those youth have a prophecy for us, something that we can learn. And as we get together in dialogue and learn from our elders, and work with our hands and our feet and our mouths, the presence of God will be manifested. Even the very Spirit of God in the most unexpected places. We can do it. Would you please stand if you're able?